If you look at your life and it feels like walking through a graveyard of half-finished projects, a guitar collecting dust in the corner, a half-coded website, baking tools you swore you'd master, and a sudden obsession with learning jujitsu, then you probably feel a very specific kind of shame. It's not laziness, it's not failure. It's the kind of shame that comes from feeling like something is wrong with you. Society has a word for people like you, dilettante. They say you're chaotic, that you lack discipline, that you don't have the grit to specialize. And eventually you start to believe them. You feel like an imposter because you can't just pick one lane and stay in it. You know the phrase, jack of all trades, master of none, and you use it as a weapon against yourself. But here's what you've forgotten. The full quote is, a jack of all trades is a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Psychology suggests that this scattered feeling isn't a defect. It's a signal of a highly adaptive nervous system. You aren't failing to specialize. You are unconsciously building a rare cognitive structure known as the M-shaped mind. While the world tells you to focus, your brain is preparing you for a future where hyperspecialization is actually a liability. Before we break down why your chaos is a survival strategy, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. To understand why this anxiety follows you everywhere, we have to look at the lie you were sold. For most of the last century, the world operated as an I-shaped game. It rewarded people who dug one hole, a single skill, a mile deep. It was a kind learning environment, like golf. The rules stayed the same. If you practiced your swing for 10,000 hours, you won. But you don't live in a kind environment anymore. Your brain knows this instinctively. The modern world is a wicked environment. The rules change constantly. And in a wicked environment, specialists are fragile. If the industry shifts, they're obsolete. If technology evolves, they're replaceable. So you drift. One year you're obsessed with electrical wiring and HVAC systems. The next year it's yoga, heavy lifting, and DJing rave music. From the outside, this looks like chaos. People label you unfocused, unreliable, strange. But that's not what's happening. What you're actually doing is collecting data from disparate domains. And this is where things get interesting. Psychology calls this far transfer. Specialists rely on near transfer. They solve problems they've seen before using familiar tools. But you do the opposite. You take ideas from one field and apply them to a completely unrelated one. Imagine a web developer who used to be a beekeeper and a farmer. On paper, those worlds have nothing in common. But that agricultural background gives them an intuitive understanding of organic systems, growth cycles, and ecosystems. They're not just writing code, they're cultivating environments. That's far transfer, that's innovation. You feel like an imposter because you're not the best at any single thing. But your value is never in depth alone. It's in synthesis. Understanding that your curiosity is a superpower can be relieving, but it doesn't fix the crushing feeling of burnout. You look around and see people your age becoming senior executives, lead engineers, industry experts, and you feel like you're still standing at the starting line because you keep switching paths. This happens because you misunderstand the geometry of your own potential. You're not T-shaped. You're M-shaped. An M-shaped person has multiple pillars of depth, connected by bridges of curiosity. But here's the trap. You cannot build all the pillars at the same time. If you try to learn data science, write a novel, and launch a startup in the same month, you collapse. The people who thrive with this mind don't multitask mastery, they practice serial mastery. They live in seasons. Your 20s might be devoted to music and art. Your 30s pivot to programming to pay the bills. You didn't abandon art, you completed a season. I once read about a 53-year-old who finally made peace with this. He realized he didn't have to choose between art and programming, so he let programming become the pillar that paid the bills. Music, philosophy, and game design flourished on nights and weekends. He turned down high-pressure leadership roles, kept his work week to 30 hours, protected his psychic energy. He didn't force everything to merge at once. He let it unfold sequentially. Eventually, all those pillars merged into his own personal video game projects. That's the M-shaped mind in action. There's one final psychological trait you have that makes you far more resilient than you realize. Evolutionary biology calls it redundancy. In nature, redundancy isn't wasteful, it's strength. Elephants rarely get cancer because they have multiple copies of cancer-fighting genes. If one fails, another takes over. Your so-called chaotic interests are your redundancy. If you're only a specialist software engineer and AI takes your job, you panic. But if you're a software engineer who also understands electrical wiring, can repair HVAC systems, and teach English, you're unbreakable. You weren't wasting time dabbling. You were building strategic adaptability. You created a safety net of skills that ensures no matter how the economy shifts, technology evolves, or industries collapse, you always have a pivot. So stop apologizing for your graveyard of hobbies. They weren't failures. They were semesters in a university you built for yourself. You were never meant to be just one thing. You were built to be the bridge between worlds that others can't even see. If you're ready to embrace your M-shaped future, drop a heart in the comments. Hit subscribe, not for motivation, but for understanding.